Dennis Rodman was born on May 13, 1961, and grew up in Dallas. He had a very difficult childhood. His father left the family when Dennis was around 3 years old. It was a major tragedy for both him and his family. With no breadwinner in the house, his mother had to work several jobs to support her children. Dennis grew up with two older sisters and often felt like he didn't belong. They were much more successful than he was, and compared to them, he saw himself as a failure. This had a profound impact on him. In high school, he was not considered a promising athlete, and nobody believed he would ever become an NBA player. He was around 5 feet 7 inches tall, did not stand out physically, and from a sports perspective, there was nothing particularly remarkable about him. He worked as a night janitor at Dallas-Fort Worth Airport, was not popular among his peers, was quite reserved, and considered himself a loser. But after graduating from high school, something unexpected happened. He began growing rapidly and eventually reached a height of over 6 feet 7 inches. Along with that growth came athleticism and a chance to play basketball at a serious level. For the first time in his life, he looked like a professional athlete. It completely changed the course of his future. He first enrolled in a small college and later transferred to another school. There, he began showcasing incredible defensive skills, especially his dominance on the boards. Rodman quickly became one of the best rebounders in his league. His energy, dedication, relentless effort on the court, athleticism, and incredible passion for the game caught the attention of NBA scouts. That was the beginning of the journey of a man who would eventually become one of the most unique and recognizable players in basketball history. In the 1986 NBA draft, Rodman was selected with the 27th overall pick, and honestly, that wasn't surprising. He was an average player with obvious athletic ability, but he didn't have a great jump shot. He wasn't an elite ball handler, and he certainly wasn't known for exceptional court vision. What he did have was relentless determination, athleticism, and a willingness to fight until the very end. He was drafted by the Detroit Pistons, and that team turned out to be the perfect fit for him. The Pistons were known as the Bad Boys. Their identity was built on physical play, constant pressure, relentless competition, and getting inside their opponents' heads. Everything about that style fit Dennis Rodman perfectly. He was the ideal piece in that system. Rodman was a master of doing the dirty work. He wasn't chasing points, he wasn't chasing assists, he wasn't trying to become the biggest superstar on the team. He wanted to win, and he was willing to do whatever it took to make that happen. He grabbed rebounds, dove for loose balls, got injured, and kept coming back for more. He lived for the game. His desire to step onto the court and compete was unmatched. That was Dennis Rodman in a nutshell. While playing in Detroit, he won back-to-back NBA championships in 1989 and 1990. He was also named NBA Defensive Player of the Year in both 1990 and 1991. And that came as no surprise. With his effort, defensive intensity, rebounding ability, and talent for disrupting opposing offenses, those awards felt well-deserved. The most important person in his career during that period was Chuck Daly. Daly was the head coach of the Detroit Pistons, and he constantly supported Rodman. He allowed him to be himself, protected him from criticism, and always knew how to reach him. For Rodman, Daly became much more than just a coach. But in 1992, Daly left the Pistons, and Rodman took it very hard. At the same time, he was going through a divorce and dealing with serious family problems. It was during this period that he fell into a deep depression, marking the beginning of one of the most difficult chapters of his life. After Chuck Daly left Detroit, combined with ongoing family problems, legal troubles, and a painful divorce, Dennis Rodman fell into a deep depression. In 1993, he was found sitting in his car with a loaded shotgun in the parking lot of the Detroit Pistons arena. For many people, it was shocking. Here was a professional athlete, a two-time NBA champion, and one of the best defenders in the league, a man earning millions of dollars and living at the peak of his career, yet he was contemplating suicide. As Rodman later explained, he never saw that moment as an attempt to kill himself. Instead, he described it as an attempt to kill his old self. After that night, he made a decision. He would no longer live according to other people's expectations. He stopped caring about public opinion, media criticism, and what society thought he should be. That was the moment a new chapter of Dennis Rodman's life began. He became a completely different person. Rodman started dyeing his hair bright colors, creating outrageous hairstyles, and behaving in increasingly unconventional ways. He began doing what made him happy, without worrying about what anyone else thought. He embraced tattoos and piercings, ignored public judgment, and gradually transformed into one of the most controversial, recognizable, and talked about figures in the world of sports. After leaving the Detroit Pistons, Rodman joined the San Antonio Spurs. Despite dealing with serious family and personal problems, he continued to play basketball at an elite level. He remained one of the league's best defenders and one of its most dominant rebounders. For several seasons in a row, he led the NBA in rebounding. It was in San Antonio that his image as a rebel fully took shape. A person who didn't care what others thought, who disliked following rules, and who always did things his own way. During this period, he began a highly publicized relationship with Madonna. At the time, she was one of the most famous and influential celebrities in the world. Their relationship attracted enormous media attention and further strengthened Rodman's reputation as someone who lived outside the norm and constantly found himself at the center of controversy and public discussion. At the same time, however, Rodman and the Spurs were experiencing serious problems. He simply didn't fit the identity of the team. The Spurs preferred a more disciplined, controlled, and structured style of basketball. Rodman was the exact opposite. He played with relentless aggression, embraced the dirty work, constantly got under opponents' skin, and had little interest in following established rules. On top of that, conflicts within the team became increasingly common. His behavior was becoming a growing concern for the organization's leadership. Eventually, in 1995, the Spurs decided to trade Rodman to the Chicago Bulls. That decision would become one of the most important turning points, not only in Rodman's career, but in NBA history as a whole. In 1995, Dennis Rodman arrived in Chicago Bulls. For many people, the trade looked like a complete gamble. It felt as if the organization was willingly releasing a wolf into a perfectly functioning machine. At that point, the Bulls, led by Michael Jordan, were already one of the strongest teams in the league. Many people wondered why they would bring in a player who was constantly surrounded by controversy, argued with coaches, broke team rules, and lived as if rules simply did not apply to him. But Rodman didn't break the machine. He became the missing piece that made it complete. Alongside Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, he formed one of the most legendary trios in basketball history. If Jordan was the face of the team and its ultimate weapon, and Pippen was the player who connected offense and defense, then Rodman handled the work that people usually don't notice until it's gone. He dove into crowds chasing loose balls, threw himself onto the hardwood, and fought for every rebound as if the entire game depended on it. While others focused on scoring points and building impressive statistics, Rodman focused on the things that actually helped teams win. He didn't play for fame. He played as if every game was the last game of his life. That's exactly why he became so valuable to the Bulls. A huge part of that success came from Phil Jackson. Unlike many coaches, Jackson never tried to change Rodman. He understood a simple truth. If you put a wild animal in a cage, it stops being what made it special in the first place. So Jackson gave him freedom. The most famous example came during the 1997-98 season. Rodman was given a few days off and headed to Las Vegas. The problem was that those few days turned into a complete disappearance. While the team was preparing for one of the most important stretches of the season, Dennis was enjoying himself in the gambling capital of the world. At one point, Michael Jordan personally had to go find his teammate and bring him back to the team. And perhaps the most unbelievable part is that after all of these stories, Rodman would step onto the court and continue doing his job better than almost anyone else in the league. The scandals stayed off the court. On the court, he was a monster. During the 1995-96 season, the Chicago Bulls set a historic record with 72 wins and only 10 losses. At the time, it felt almost impossible, and Rodman was one of the biggest reasons why it happened. After he arrived, the Bulls won 3 consecutive NBA championships in 1996, 1997, and 1998. Even Michael Jordan later admitted that without Rodman, the team would not have been able to dominate for so long. It was in Chicago that Dennis Rodman finally proved a simple truth to the entire basketball world. You don't have to score 30 points a game to become a legend. Sometimes it's enough to be the person willing to do everything that nobody else wants to do.